Hello friends and welcome to another review by Dark Side of the Lord. My name is Kait and today I'm going to be reviewing That Time I Got Drunk and Yeeted a Love Potion on a Werewolf. And again, I returned this book early to the library without realizing that I still needed to record my review. So hopefully some beautiful graphic is showing up here to remind you what the cover of the book looks like and to give you an idea. Otherwise, I'm sorry, we don't need the book. I write my own synopsis, so we're fine from here. And I'm hoping the names are, I'm gonna everyone. The names are, wow, everything that's popping into my head sounds horrible. The names are easy enough to remember. We're just gonna go with it. As usual, my review will be done in two parts. The first part will be spoiler free, and the second part, if there is a second part, will contain spoilers. Unless I cover the first part seemingly well. I am learning recently in the last two reviews, I am mostly able to cover the book in the first part. So unless I have pressing things to discuss, I will give you a warning and then talk spoilers. Otherwise, maybe it'll just be entirely spoiler free. Now, also to remind you all, I did already review That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. So make sure to go to my channel and check it out if you have not read the first book. This is the second book of this series. I will be spoiling the first book from the start. So if you have not read That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon, click away, read the first book, watch the first review, then come back to this one because I don't want you to be mad at me for spoiling that book, okay? This is your warning. All right, my handy-dandy synopsis for the moment. It's been a year since Sin has returned home, bringing with her a horde of demons that claim to be safe. But they're causing a ruckus in Bree's hometown, especially a specific werewolf that might be reacting to the love potion Bree accidentally hit him in the head with after a very obsessed human tried to get her to drink it. But why does she have to be the one to suffer for that idiot's horrible actions? Now the werewolf won't leave her alone, claiming that it's not the love potion making his heart beat. He's really in love with her. Actually, mated is the term he used. Bree is forced to wait out the potion's effect as her town begins to spiral from the disappearance of three women from her town. Wow, I swear it's me reading and not writing. From her town. Could the new demon neighbors be to blame, or something more sinister hoping to tear down the thin line of peace between humans and demons? Okay, now, we're going to go with the question that has been in my mind since reading this title. My brain took Yeeted as a very different definition than the book. To me, Yeeted had a sexual connotation, and clearly it does not. If you are questioning like I was, Yeeted means strongly thrown, strongly chucked and gotten rid of, discarded. It is not what I was thinking. So I was kind of disappointed. I was a little bit disappointed. I was a lot disappointed. Now, if you did watch my review for how That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon, wow, not how to do something, you will know that I guessed that the second book was going to be about the captain of the boat and the werewolf that we talk about in here, Flynn. However, Flynn, wow, I think Flynn's the demon now. Someday I'm going to put all the books in here. Characters titles. I've done the research. I mean Felix. Flynn is the dragon. And I could just tell right as soon as I said that I got the name wrong. So we're talking about Felix, okay? So I assumed if you watched my video, I had made the assumption that the second book was going to be about the captain and Felix the werewolf. However, I was very wrong in all of that. And I'm not spoiling it. It's said in the first 2 pages. It's very clear what the story is going to be about, and so here you have it. Now, I did go into this book with extremely high hopes because the first book was phenomenal to the point that I've convinced my non-romantasy reader to give it a read, and she's excited because why not? It is amazing. The world is a lot of fun. The foodie elements were a lot of fun. The characters were a lot of fun. And who doesn't like broody dragons? But all those things that I said that I loved about book 1 were not here in this one. Sadly, we were missing some of the great foodie elements, even though Bree is a cheesemaker, and I believe she's the cheesemaker, and has a lot of her own things. We were missing her great points in being able to have the foodie moments. And then broody dragon was present, but Felix is not a broody dragon. Felix is a lovable puppy dog. And I don't know about you, because I married the good guy. I want to read about the broody bad guys. And so Felix was just one of those characters where he was just too sweet and nice. and it was not my cup of tea. Now, if you like the good sweet guys and you want to know more, read more good sweet guys, then Felix is just up your alley. He's a cinnamon roll, you want to hug him and squish him, and you want nothing bad to happen to him. So if that's your trope, go, run, get this book now. The other things that were missing in this book that I really loved about book one is we weren't as much at the fantasy adventure aspect of the book. There was a small line of something happening, as I said, that there are these women disappearing from the town, and so that does consist in the book, and it takes like 3/4 of the book for that to actually really play out. This is a heavily romance book. I wouldn't even really call it a romantasy, except for the very fact that it's set in the same world as book one. The fantasy element is 0 to almost non-existent. Okay, if you take out the werewolf as well, it is almost completely non-existent. We do not have any adventure or fantasy elements outside of the werewolf until really, like I said, the last quarter to last third of the book in general. And so that, I like romance books, but I was going in for a romantasy, I was going in for an adventure, and with the way that book one ended with them already killing the witch, I was already skeptical as to what would be the adventure, which is why I was thinking it would be about the ship captain and the werewolf, because her going off on the boat, being able to go do magical things, other adventures, removed from the town. I did not expect this book to be based in Sin's hometown, and I expected it to be far-flung in the world. And so I was excited to jump into this one, but it wasn't. It was back home with a character that we really didn't have any connection to. We saw her for maybe a chapter in book one, but after that, we didn't really know anything about her. So we're coming back to this world and we're getting reunited with a character that we haven't built a connection to. And so that was also a weird choice, I think, to make in this scenario. In doing that, not having a whole book to connect to Bree like I did the ship captain, I wasn't able to connect with her in a quick and easy way. And because of that, again, I just didn't care as much. I was also missing the cozy vibe. Surprisingly, even though it was an adventure story, the first book was extremely cozy. Now, think Legends and Lattes raised up a few notches. It's definitely a little bit more exciting and fun than Legends and Lattes, but it had that same kind of fantasy cozy. You didn't have to learn a lot about the world, but you still really got to enjoy it and just sit deep, which also was a huge problem that there wasn't the same amount of humor in this book. Again, book one was hilarious. Book one had so many awesome tropes and excitement. It had the bickering innkeepers, which was one of my favorite parts. It even had Felix coming up. It had the very way that they killed the witch, and through all of it was hilarious. Sin and Flynn's fighting, his broodiness, the idea of these people from Sin's town going out on adventures and then finding out about the truth at the end. All of that was humorous. Sin was humorous, but Bree didn't have the same humor behind her in the story. And again, I was missing that. All the reasons I fell in love with book one, again, were not here, as you can see. And that made this book very hard for me to enjoy and get into. And was this a sophomore slump? That is the biggest question, was this a sophomore slump? Did she always plan to write it about Bree? Or did she have other ideas and then decided to do it about Bree? Where the first book felt like a really well-rounded story, I was shocked at Lemming's ability to be able to take this huge fantasy element and condense it into such a small, tiny book. This book was not a full story, in my opinion. We had the tiny little fantasy element run through that was resolved by the end of the book, but even the tropey romance, because, very much in romance, we have the story arc of people somehow meet cute, they meet somehow, they fall in love, we have the back and forth, will they, won't they fall in love, then we have the moment they fall in love, and then we have the cut of the second to third act where something horrible can happen, and they break up, or they have to go through some sort of trial to be able to prove the relationship to each other, and then the third act essentially wraps that all up together and comes back together to them being in a relationship. And we didn't even have that in this book. It really wanted to read like a fanfic full of sex. And again, this book was extremely sex heavy, just as the first one, but it felt more forced and put into the book as having like, let's have these scenes instead of actually something that was part of the plot. And my other thought in that comes into play is the fact that I'm tired of reading about characters who read. Ha ha ha, we're all like this. I don't want to see myself in a book. I don't want to see how crazy I am and falling into these tropes and falling into these characters in these worlds and my extreme fandoms. I don't want to read about that. I want to just exist and pretend I'm not that way. So I want to read about someone who is obsessed with a fandom and then essentially gets to live that out in a sexual fantasy. I don't want to read that. And that was a huge problem with this book. Because I just don't want the good guy. None of that was fun to read. Also, it was a little bit strange. They were all a little bit strange. Yeah, those scenes were strange. I just think that there was a lot more that Lemming had to do in this book. Maybe this is the chance of where being a romantasy writer didn't work for her because she didn't have as much of the fantasy background and knowledge to be able to really make this book layered and have more to it than just sex scenes. I hate to be like that, but that is true, and it just was really lacking. I already got book 3 though, so I'm not giving up on her yet, and her next series sounds hilarious. It's already been announced, so check it out if you haven't yet. But you can kind of tell I believe these were started as self-published books first, and I hate that for her, but I'm so happy she's doing well, and I love that the first book came out, and I think that with more practice she might be able to pull this off again. But this is exactly, this book and series is my definition of romantasy. This is what I mean by romantasy. This is not fantasy. Fantasy is fantasy books with a romance line, trope, plot point. Alright friends, I do have some spoilers that I want to talk about, so if you don't want to hear the spoilers, click away, ruin my metrics. I don't mind, but when you've read the book, come back and give this part a listen. Okay. So Lemming tried to be really funny by making the cult guys that couldn't get a date, because, I mean, it didn't come across as funny to me. It came across as sad and cringe, and I didn't really get into it, and I just kind of wanted them to just all disappear. And the fact that the bad guy was a lobster, like, I get surreal and fun and going out there and crazy is kind of interesting, but maybe I'm too much of a realist. I was not going for the lobster portion. Did you like the lobster portion? Because I was not in for the lobster. Especially not at the end when they were eating the lobster. Because in a way that feels like cannibalism. I know that they're human and this was a lobster, but this was a conscious lobster. That's probably why I'm a vegetarian. I couldn't get past that. That part was really, really weird for me. And now we're saying that the witch was possessed by the lobster? Am I supposed to feel bad for her? Help a girl. Can you tell me what's going on? I also really struggled with the obsessive behavior of some of the characters in the book, and you can write whatever you want, but it's just not something I really wanted to read about. I guess it was explained really well as to why Brie had to have the love potion and like Yeeted. But this guy I think you could have written him a less disgusting in a way that was palatable to the readers. I don't know. It was just not something I really wanted to read about. And so you have him. So you have the character that feeds Brie the love potion, right? But then at the same time you have that other character going after the barmaid, and he was fine in what he was doing, even though it was almost the same. And that's what really bothered me mostly, is that the fact that this guy who fed Brie the love potion wasn't okay, but the other guy was. And that's kind of how it came across to me when I was reading it. And so if you're going to make one not okay, you need to make the other one not okay as well. So that was troublesome. And then again, I needed the book to be more, because it was just very much the sexual relationship between Felix and Brie. And we weren't given a lot of plot. It was just like, we're mated. I love you. I promise it's not the love potion. And I get it. And the ending was obvious because you knew that he was actually mated with her, but there was just the depth in the way that they fell in love. It was just, could there have been a little bit more, oh, maybe it is just the love potion, maybe I really am not in love with you. So the ending had that tension and that excitement and that, oh my god, they really are in love, instead of this just like, well, duh. Because mating was talked so much about in book 1 that getting to the mating here was just like, okay, yeah, he totally loves her, okay. So, did that work for you? I don't know. Let me know. Alright friends, that's all I have to talk about. Thank you so much for watching this review. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel and give the video a thumbs up if you especially liked it. And don't forget, I co-host a podcast also on the same channel where we talk about our writing journeys, we recap content, and we host a horror book club. So make sure to check that out at the channel. We are also audio only on Spotify, iHeart, and Apple Podcasts. I got it right that time. But happy reading, friends, and I'm excited to see you next time. Bye!